Hey guys, this is Milk.
And this is Trondy.
And we're bringing you episode 7 of the Dungeon Floor.
Yeah, it is correct. It is 7. You got it right.
I know, right?
That's crazy. And we're doing RFK. The Dungeon Floor Sweet Awesome series where Milk and I are going through and 2-manning all the 5-man instances of the game.
And when we do this, we normally explain to you some cool mechanics that you can use to help your
normally
style. But what we're going to want to talk about this time instead is some of the talent changes that are going to be happening in Cataclysm.
Yeah, because there are a lot of things that are changing, so we wanted to make a video and kind of...
Really briefly about how this run went. Bad.
Yeah, this run was by far probably the worst run we will ever do.
Okay, I like jumping on things because I like exploring, and then this happened.
Yeah, you happened to get stuck behind a fence. So I was like, hold on, let me get back there so I can show you how to get out. Because I'm an awesome wall jumper. So I get in there and then I realize I get stuck in the wrong place.
So we're both stuck behind a fence in different places.
Yeah. I tried to destroy my hearth and use the auto unstuck because I was thinking, hey, auto unstuck will port me forward. So I destroyed my hearth so that it wouldn't hearth me because otherwise auto unstuck hurts you. So but that didn't work.
Which he didn't, inform me of because I'd never really had to use the auto unstuck. We'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, you didn't have to use it anyway because you freaking jumped out like a...
Because I was just like, oh, hey, yeah, by the way, I could just time this jump super nice and be smart about it.
I was making a ticket because the auto unstuck didn't work and jumping out wouldn't work because I didn't have opening.
I went into kitty form. My kitty's meowing. And I was just jumping on the thing again because he was stuck and I was out. And I was like, hey, let's explore the level.
As I was still trying to get out.
So I was like, hey, I'm really close to... Oh my god. Everything disappeared. Very carefully step backwards. Back and forth.
What did you think was going to happen?
Fall.
I honestly, what was your thought process? Of course when you're playing with the edge of the map, you're going to fall off. What else is going... there was nothing else that could possibly happen.
I didn't think I would be able to get that close anymore without...
Literally, a minute later, I get my auto unstuck back up, and then I use it.
Meanwhile, I'm taking a screen capture and sending it to him. So I use my auto unstucker, not realizing it's just going to hearth me back to Stormwind. Razorfen Kraul is in the south of the Barrens.
Yeah, so... It took him okay, so at this point we had wasted about, I think, half an hour from when he got stuck in the first place. So I got bored waiting, so I started soloing some elites, and we're going to ignore that part. How did that get in there? So...
He stripped naked.
so I was fighting some more elites, and then you get back. And at this point, we wasted 30 minutes.
And we hated this place.
We wiped several times. And...
Well, okay. Now, to be fair, I immediately showed you where I went, which was, in your opinion, a stupid idea.
Yeah. I mean, after you just fell off the map, why would you go back to the same exact place?
Not just that, but I'd do it a third time.
After this, I was thinking to myself, this is not cutting it. We need to... stop messing up so badly so that we're not in here for forever. And we ended up being here for 3 hours anyway. So
this was just a bad run in general.
Yeah. But, we still pulled it off. We still did it anyway. We got the achievement and everything.
We're going to move on to the talents because they're less frustrating.
And it's also really important to talk about this stuff because this stuff is going to become, the new way that talents are handled in the game. So
yeah.
Let's talk about talents.
Alright, so first off, we're going to talk about what they're changing into in a brief minute, but first I want you to understand a couple of terms that Trondy came up with, outside of any known convention to us.
Yeah, it's just sort of like a way to explain things easier, and sort of a different way to think about it.
Yeah, so first off, right now, there are 3 kinds of talents.
Yeah.
There are core talents that you're going to get regardless of whether you do PvP or PvE or some hybrid spec.
Yeah.
These are increased healing to healing spells for a healer, increased critical chance. You're going to get that whether or not you're bashing other players or bashing useless mobs.
Yeah, you know, like Crusader Strike as well. Even abilities, you know, they help regardless if you do PvP or PvE. So those are classified as core talents. And then there's specific talents that are designed for specifically either PvP specs or PvE specs, or you know, specifically tank specs or specifically DPS specs.
We're going to call it the specific talent. The third talent, which people like to designate as fillers, but really they're situational talents.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily helpful all the time. They're not necessarily going to be used all the time, but in very select situations, they're very helpful.
Yeah.
These are helpful. Some of them are PvP situational, some of them are PvE situational. Others are even both situational.
Yeah. Just abilities that you use in both circumstances, but you know, the talents themselves do things that may or may not help all of the time. So it's a very situational thing. So there's those three kinds of talents. And the reason why we define those three kinds of talents is to kind of have ways to explain the way the talents themselves are changing. Because currently, optimal, quote-unquote, DPS specs involve, you know, these very specific ways to lay out your talents. And, for instance, if you're a rogue and you want to be combat, there is one specific combat spec that you've probably seen or heard of at some point. And it consists of a lot of core abilities, a lot of specific abilities, and only enough situational abilities to fill up the tiers you need to get on to the next tiers.
Alright, so currently there are quote-unquote cookie-cutter specs, which Blizzard has stated they don't like.
Yeah.
The way they're moving away from that, though, is in Cataclysm, there are going to be 30-point trees. However, these same types of talents, core, specific, and situational, are again going to appear in Cataclysm.
Yeah.
However, with slight differences.
Yeah.
How this is going to change in Cataclysm is that there are going to be fewer core and specific talents.
Yeah.
What this means is, while your spec is going to have a lot more quote-unquote filler talents, we call them situational, because really, it depends on your play style which one you're going to choose. And you're not tailoring the way you play to your talent anymore. You're literally like gonna have like half of your thing be the same as everyone else's, but the other half is...
For instance, I don't know if this talent is still in the game or not, but rogues used to be able to gain combo points when they dodge attacks. And if there was a talent point that did this, in BC or Lich King, you would be considered a bad player for taking it if you were doing PvE DPS. But now, you could easily pick up a talent like this, and it would, depending on how you play the game, it would tremendously help you while you're doing soloing. And there will be situations where you're doing like a 5-man or something, and you have mobs attacking you, and suddenly that talent point becomes very situationally helpful. But these aren't things that are constantly useful. But it still is something that you can appreciate. You can probably appreciate this more than a flat 5% increase to all the damage that you do. It makes you feel more tailored and custom and capable of handling different circumstances.
Yes, so really one thing I've believed in my entire time is not to tailor the way you play to what your spec is, but to really tailor your spec to the way you play.
Exactly.
This actually is going to allow that. You will be able to tailor like your situational talents to the way you play the game.
Yeah. No one will give you odd looks about it, and you won't feel bad about it, because
everyone is going to have
everyone's going to have to do this. Like I just for the sake of you know, checking this theory out, I went ahead and I tried to build some DPS specs, and I tried to make specs without getting any situational talents, and it's not possible anymore. Like, I remember specifically for Red Paladins, I had to get, I think, 6 or 7 situational talents in order to actually get up to 31 points in the tree.
Yeah.
So
you will be required to get situational talents.
Yeah.
Which is what your customization is.
Yeah. So, you know, you shouldn't, even within, you know, my friend circle within the game, a lot of people, you know, armory someone that they knew was a good player, and then they would just copy their spec and try to play like the spec dictates, but that's totally the wrong approach.
That's something that has bothered me like the entire time I've played World of Warcraft. To this day, I still don't do it. Like, as a tank, as a paladin tank, my tank Caltreya I have Seal of Command. I know many Pally DPSs that don't get Seal of Command because it's 1 point that they could put somewhere else. I decided to get that as a tank because it allows me to do much more AoE threat generation.
Yeah. Yeah, you're making yourself more versatile by picking up this talent.
And, you know, come boss fight, I can just switch back to Seal of Vengeance and do just as much threat as the other Pally tank. I know people in my guild were just adamant that I was a bad tank because of my spec. And then when they actually played with me, they realized that they could AoE to their heart's content and never have a problem with threat in an AoE group.
Yeah.
Because...
Yeah. And... You know, you were a paladin. I mean, your spec probably still looked really, really standard, relatively speaking. Before I made, you know, Trondy, and before we did this, I was a Death Knight tank. And
I'm going to really quick amend this. This was back in Ulduar patch, so...
Yeah, this was in, what was it? I was playing when Ulduar Heroics were, like, the hardest part of the game. So there was no TOC. And apparently I quit at a really good time. But, anyway, my spec made no sense to anyone but myself. I had to explain it to other people because I said I was a Death Knight tank, but I didn't specify what spec I was because I wasn't really any spec. I think I had the most points in Unholy, but, you know, that doesn't really mean anything. I went something like 36 points on Unholy, just far enough to get Bone Shield and 1 point in the Disease. And I went just far enough in Blood to get the stamina buff, and I went the rest in Frost. So, you know, I had 30 points in one tree, 20 points in another tree, and 10 points in another tree. But my spec was very, very odd. But that didn't make me a bad player. You know, I was tanking Ulduar hard modes in, you know, 10-man Nax gear because my spec was perfect for how I played the game. And it allowed me to mitigate damage, it allowed me to have a large health pool, and it allowed me to heal myself, which increased my threat gen everywhere. I was a very versatile player, but my spec made me look very retarded. So as a result, I actually didn't get invites for some, you know, 25-man Nax pugs because they didn't like my spec. And I remember trying to justify my spec to them. But, so... You know, making your spec catered to your playstyle is something that I know and something Milk knows to be very, very important and to be very, very beneficial.
And that's something that Blizzard has always also believed in.
Yeah.
Because they are adamant about getting rid of cookie cutter specs.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to have the same talents except for the situational talents, which... as an overall player thing, is just purely preference.
Yeah, exactly.
So because the situationals are purely preference, and you have to spend 6+ in every tree, cookie cutterness is almost gone.
Yeah. You know, they could have these really obscure, very, very situational abilities, and it'll look normal, but they'll also be able to do some really interesting things with it that you wouldn't have thought of. And they'll make amazing use of these abilities that they had to get in order to max out their tree. But that's about everything right there as far as talent revisions go. So I'm pretty comfortable with editing the episode here.
All right, so that's about all we wanted to talk to about talent changes.
Yep.
We really didn't get into any specifics. We really wanted to talk about the general, and I feel like we did that well.
Yeah. We actually have a very, very large list of things we want to talk about as far as Cataclysm revisions go.
So in next episode, which should be Nomergan, we're going to be talking about some of those other ones.
Yeah, I really like Nomer. So.
I did too.
So yeah, this has been Trondy.
And this has been Milk.
And thanks for watching episode 7. We'll see you in Nomer.
All right. Ciao.